Collin is a Paralympian in Para Nordic skiing. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and being diagnosed with arthrogryposis?
Yeah, for sure. So from day one, I mean, I was born with a disability. That was pretty obvious to all of us, and we couldn't get an actual diagnosis until I was about 6 or 7, I believe. We did tons of doctor's appointments, going to Toronto, going to Montreal to see specialists, just because it was so unique at the time. And I just don't think anyone was really familiar with arthrogryposis that much. So they kind of dumped me into the muscular dystrophy category. And that's just what it is. And there was nothing specific. But I think my mom just kind of wanted more of an answer to actually what it was. So it took a few years, but we were finally able to do that with some research and just reaching out to different doctors when I was a kid. It was a bit of a challenge, sure, growing up with it, I'm sure, as we all know, and in our unique way. It affects us all differently. So it gives us a truly unique perspective on life, especially growing up, how to overcome whatever barrier that might be for us and just kind of make it our lifestyle. I think I was already always pretty good at doing that growing up. I never let it stop me from pretty much doing anything, unless it literally physically stopped me from doing something. Like putting on a pair of ice hockey skates, I could never stand and skate. But you just adapt and you find another way to do something, right? I was always active growing up. I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger than I am. Growing up in Ontario, where we're right beside lakes and rivers, so I spent a lot of time swimming, always outdoors and being active. But I'll jump ahead. It wasn't really until my mid-20s where I actually found an actual para sport that I could get involved in. When I was living in Sudbury at the time, I joined a local sledge hockey team, just totally fell in love with it. Because, growing up in Canada, hockey's the sport here, something that you always grow up watching on TV, players you idolize. My favorite sport was hockey, and Patrick Law was my favorite player when I was so it was pretty special to finally be able to find sledge hockey and just grab onto that and start playing it. So I played in Sudbury on our local team for a few years, and then it just got really hard to manage the team and keep it around for much longer. I kind of joined near the end of the life of the team. So we did some tournaments in Ontario. When we did our last tournament, we kind of agreed as a team that we would kind of take a step back and, unless we found some more coaches and stuff. So I wasn't really ready to end my journey in parasport because I just started it. After our last tournament, I got home, I started Googling, different parasports in Ontario and in my region in Sudbury and came across Para Nordic. So it was October, September actually at the time. So there's no snow yet. So we started roller skiing, which was a completely different animal than actually getting on snow. But I fell in love with it immediately. Again, I think it was just the fact that I could find a sport that was kind of geared towards me and where I could excel at it with my disability. It didn't even matter. So I jumped on a sit ski, on some roller skis, and just started flying around on the road, and it was so much fun. I think just having a natural athletic drive really made the sport of cross-country skiing really appealing to me. Kind of outside of a team sport, it was something that, I could focus on just for me. As much as I enjoyed having teammates to rely on in a sport, it's a totally different thing just going out and you being the only person on your team. Just going out, training all the time. Like we train crazy amount of hours during a week, but I love that about it. I love it so much.
That is so nice to hear because I need some motivation in my life to, do something active. But that is pretty awesome. And the question I have though is what kind of catalyzed the transition between sledge hockey to skiing? Or what even drew you to Paranordic skiing?
Honestly, I think there was just that opportunity I had in my town to try something different. So I was just eager to get into whatever it might have been, like hand cycling, Paranordic skiing, just something. I just wanted to branch out and keep moving in a sport that was, made for me. Honestly, Paranordic just happened to be that one. I think the other thing that really drew me to it is I never truly had something I could do in the winter. Like winter was always that time of year growing up where I spent a lot of time inside because it was cold. I couldn't do much. There's just nothing easy for me to do in the winter. So I think that's what really drew me to Paranordic skiing was, oh, wow, I have this amazing sport where I can go out on the snow and go through these beautiful trails. Yeah, it's just amazing. I don't know how else to explain it. It was just the perfect thing for me to find.
I can see you're radiating as you're talking about it. So, and you're explaining that you had a crazy training schedule. So I kind of want to hear what your training regimen looks like. Do you wake up at 6 a.m.?
Yeah, it kind of varies. We do about on average 10 to 12 hours a week skiing.
Okay.
And then you can add into strength and mobility, whatever your training plan is. It's very individualized for me personally now at this level where I'm competing at. But when I started, it was kind of just basic, 4 to 8 hours a week, just going out and just learning the basics of the sport and building those foundations. So it was really important to start and not just jump right into it with a huge, yearly training plan, because there's no point jumping into it and then just, not finding joy in it anymore because it turns into work. We definitely built into the training and just slowly progressed and built the foundation of learning how to do the sport and just finding joy in it too. And that's the big part for me every day that helps me get up at 6 a.m. so I can go start training at 8 o'clock and keeps me motivated for those 4-hour days when you go out and you do a 4-hour ski or a 4-hour roller ski in the summer, whatever it might be. I mean, that's the best time to go train, especially if you have double sessions during the day, which we most often do. So like tomorrow is a perfect example. Today is an off day. So it's kind of, rare that we have an off day completely off. Tomorrow is like a regular training day. So we'll be up at 6 out on the biathlon range for 8:30, probably for an hour and a half. Come back home, have some lunch, usually get horizontal for a little bit and just recover from the morning training session. And then in the afternoon, probably go out and do another hour to 2 hour, likely just ski, just go out and work on technique. Or if there's some teammates out there, just go for a ski with them.
For someone who's not too familiar with skiing, can you tell me like what type of techniques like go into, I guess, the perfect, I don't know, trail? Is that what you call it in skiing?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning,
That's
Collin.
okay.
Forgive me.
That's kind of a really difficult question to answer, to be honest, because in a sit ski, personally, your technique to ski and propel yourself is so different based on your disability. I mean, it could range from me just having muscular dystrophy and just sitting, but having full function with my trunk and upper body, compared to someone who is an SCI, who has far less mobility and is just using their arms. They can't use their back or their trunk as much. So it's really amazing, actually, just how different the sport is for everyone with their disability, because it's different how it affects their body. So for me, I guess just the main focus is just working on technique a lot of the time. And that's just power transfer when you're double pulling down and trying to keep your body in a specific angle and motion every time you're doing it. So you're going up and you're driving your pulls down, and you're literally just focusing on that for sometimes hours at a time.
Wow, that sounds so hard, and I commend you on that.
So you have to love what you're doing, right? So it makes it easy in a way. And you learn to start breaking down training sessions into little segments sometimes, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes, where you just focus on one small little portion of the whole technique altogether. And that really helps, still work on that foundation of the whole technique. And it also helps make the training session a little less monotonous when you're going out and you're just doing this for like 4 hours, right? Double pulling.
Yeah.
So if you can break it down and kind of work on like little cues, like keeping your fingers on the bottom of the pole or keeping your hands coming up at the same time when you drive down. So there's lots of stuff that we utilize, little tools like that to get through training sessions, especially if it's -25 and in a blizzard and you just have to go out because you need to do a training session, right?
Actually, I'm glad you touched upon that. It kind of sparked my thought about like what type of accommodative or like adaptations like have you like implemented on any like gear that you use? You were saying like it's super individualized. How does your equipment differ from like any of like your other teammates?
Yeah, so we knew right away that I can't bend my knees. We knew that we had to create a sled for me where I could sit with my legs out, but also keep some sort of forward angle. So ideally, when we're looking at sled design, the more forward you can get on top of your skis, the more forward you can get when you drive down. Yeah. So it's all about ideal power transfer and balance on top of the skis. I guess I'm just on my sit ski that I'm on now is my third version of my sit ski since I started skiing in 2015, and it's changed quite a bit as far as the length of it and the angle, and just adding little pieces to change that. The bucket shapes, it's highly individualized for every athlete. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of work that goes into that, and it's nice to have people around on the team and just to get to know people who can kind of think outside the box to help you design something and can understand biomechanics a little bit better than I can, for example. So they can watch you ski and see those angles and see where you need to make a little adjustments.
So in comparison with your first, what is the biggest difference that you see between like your current version from like when you started?
So I guess the two biggest things would be the weight of the sit ski. So the overall design is about 4 pounds lighter now than my first one was. So it's much easier and more efficient if you can take some weight off sit ski, but then you get to a certain point where you can't take that much weight off and risk the rigidity and the strength of frame itself. So then you have to start looking, well, how can I lose weight to make myself lighter and more efficient on the show? That's the whole thing. But the other main design change that I think that we've implemented is just playing around with that forward angle. When I started, I was basically horizontal, almost similar to the position I'd be sitting in playing sledge hockey. So it was just a matter of getting training in, getting used to double poling and levering on my back and my hips and seeing if I do have the muscle structure back there to support that forward motion going back like this for hours at a time. Because again, it affects everyone differently, and I don't have the greatest muscle structure in my lower back. So it's difficult for me to truly lean totally forward, driving into my poles to get power and coming back up and doing this. So we've kind of had to find the happy medium between the sit ski design and the forward angle and just what is comfortable for me when I'm double pulling. Could probably change in another 2 years as I keep doing this sport and my body adapts to it, because everything is always changing in the sport.
Well, I am excited to tune in when you go to Beijing, which is in March, correct? March 4th?
Yeah, Paralympics are in March, and we as a team, we leave on February 25th. So it's coming down pretty soon.
Oh, how are you feeling so far?
You know what? Honestly, I think once we're actually leaving tomorrow to go to Lake Louise to start our bubble as a team and just do a training camp up there, because it's at altitude and it's very similar to the altitude in Beijing. I think once we all get in there, I think that's when the excitement will start. Right now, it's kind of just like regular every day, you're still doing what you do on day to day, go out and train and come back home. I think once we get in with the teammates and that vibe is there and everyone can start to feel that excitement, then I'll start to feel it. But right now, it's just kind of, it is what it is right now.
Gotcha. I've asked a couple of Paralympians this just because their answer is different. It's kind of interesting. So what gets you like psychologically in the zone, like, right? So that you can focus and you're just in tune with everything that you're doing. Do you have like a special like ritual?
You know what? I probably have a lot. I've talked about this quite a few times with the team on team meetings and with other people. The more I think about it, the more I feel like I have a lot of these weird quirks that I do on race day to get started. I always eat the same thing for breakfast. I always try to eat the same thing for dinner the night before. Like, I just know what works for me. I put my left glove on before my right glove, always strap my left pole on before my right pole. I always do my straps and my sit ski in the exact order. It's just a lot of little things. But the two big things for me is I like the feeling of being nervous going into a race, and I can use that energy for my race. I like being nervous and being able to shift that mindset into some positive energy to go out and race, because at the end of the day, racing still brings me so much joy, no matter if I finish last or if I win. I just love racing and being competitive. I think the other thing, I have this little cue where I draw a little line with my pole in front of my ski when I'm on the start line. I've always told myself from day one when I started doing that as soon as I cross that line that I've made, nothing else matters. I'm just racing. I've always been able to really do that well, just kind of zone everything out and just get into race mode. I think just finding little cues and little quirks like that, like I do on race day, just helps me get in the zone and get ready for it.
Not in an athletic way, but I do have my own like little rituals for anything. Like if I'm giving a presentation or something, I'm like, I cannot eat eggs this morning. Something like that. I totally understand. That's really cool. I wonder if when it's broadcasted, I can see if you're going to make a little mark in the snow or something.
You might.
I'll be like, oh, Collin told me about that.
Yeah.
Do you know like the day that you'll be competing? Like, do you have like a schedule of when you'll be like broadcasted?
So I'm not sure about the broadcast schedule, but I would assume that CBC or Facebook might live stream most of this like they did 4 years ago. We have 8 races on the schedule. So between that, I'll probably be balancing probably 6 events. Again, that just depends on, my overall fitness when I get to Beijing, how travel goes, but also prioritizing some races over the others. What races are my strong suit and what races I will more or less go in and use for a training race. So still going and racing, I still have a goal of obviously trying to win the race or do the best I can. In my mindset, some of those races are the races I'm using to prepare for other races where I know I already have big goals for specific races. So I'll likely do the first race, I think is on the 5th, is a biathlon sprint. So it's a 6-kilometer biathlon race. So 3 loops of the course 2 times, and every miss is a penalty loop. So the penalty loop, depending on the size, it's usually about 20 to 30 seconds of a time penalty for every shot you miss. It's always key to not miss your shots in a biathlon race. And then basically I'll go from there. Looking at the schedule, I'll sit down with my coach and we'll have this similar discussion, also keeping in mind how things always shift once we get there. Travel is chaotic, especially right now with COVID. So there's always the stress of travel. Maybe your gear doesn't show up. Maybe you get sick. So you always have to have plan B, C, D, and E all the way down for things that are shifting. But ideally, I'm probably going to be doing about 6 events.
And now you bring up your coach. What do you think is the, I guess, most lasting piece of advice your coach has given you?
Robin has always been a proponent of finding joy in what we do and always, being proud of the result, no matter what it is. We have this process where we've done this 4 years of training. At this point, we go out and we do the job the best that we can. At the end of the day, we have to be proud with the whole process. In the last 4 years, the training, everything that's led up to this, whether we win or we miss a podium or we're completely at the back of the pack. It just is what it is. As long as we go out and do the absolute best that we can that given day, that's all that we can ask for. And we just have to be proud with that.
I need to remind myself of that. I'm personally a very big perfectionist. So I just need to hone in on that. The other question I wanted to ask was, in the Paralympic field and just like even in your area, have you come across other individuals with AMC or arthrogryposis? Honestly, I think I've been through life feeling like I'm the only one with arthrogryposis. So it's kind of interesting to see how many people who have arthrogryposis actually come in contact with others who have like a similar experience or diagnosis.
No, that's a really good observation because it's probably the same for me. Until I started into parasport, I never knew anyone else with arthrogryposis. Anyone I knew with a disability was some sort of spinal cord injury, from an accident. Like no one really that had a congenital condition similar to mine. But that's a lot more common in the field of Para Nordic. I mean, just in parasport in general when you get to this level. So when I really started, it was about 27 when I started racing internationally and being around more people like myself.
For me, it was really exciting to see arthrogryposis representation in the Tokyo Paralympics because we did a whole list on all the athletes that had arthrogryposis and we found it was like over 30.
Wow.
And yeah, so when I came upon you, I was like jumping for joy. Actually sitting with joy. I didn't jump. Anyways. So I was just really stoked to hear like we have just even more AMC representation in sports, especially like the Winter Paralympics. That's just me saying everyone here at our organization is cheering you on, and we're definitely going to be tuning in and just making sure we're following your journey.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. Yeah.
Of course. Before we end the interview, I did want to ask if you had any piece of wisdom or advice for our younger kids in the community who are very interested into sports, but I mean, oftentimes they're not too sure if they're able to even participate depending on like their disability. So let us know how you broke into sports despite having arthrogryposis.
If you want to try something, go and try it and do it. There's always something available for you. Para Nordic is a perfect example with our different classifications, and you don't even have to do it to race. It can also just be something that you have to get outside and just be with nature or go do for yourself. And at the end of the day, that's what is the most important part for me. I love racing, I love the training, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to be a cross-country skier because it's something that I have for me. If you can find that, if you know that you want a sport or just an activity, it doesn't even have to be competitive, just something to do your research, reach out and see what's available and just go try it. Like just take that jump and just see what's out there for you. Because you're probably going to find something and just absolutely fall in love with it and be like, why didn't I do this years ago? Why didn't I advocate for myself and look for this and try to find something so I could get outside and do something? Just go do it. That's it. Yeah, it's easy to steal that Nike motto, but honestly,
I know,
we've been
right?
using that a lot for quite a few years. Just do it. I think you have to just go do it and try. The perfect example is with cross-country skiing. Like it's very hard to control when you're on skis because in a sit ski, you can't do this to slow down. You can't brake. So you have to figure it out. There's a lot of falls, a lot of crashes, but you literally just have to do it to figure it out. And I think that applies with any kind of sport, any kind of activity. Just go and do it. Yeah, and it's easier to sit here and say that, but it's a lot more difficult to actually go and do it. But if you can do it, I promise you, it's going to be an amazing feeling because you're going to find something that's made for you, just like I did with Para Nordic skiing.
I'm glad our community can hear that from you, a Paralympian who is just crushing it out there. So thank you so much, Collin, for giving us a little look into your journey. And we are very excited for your competitions. We will be cheering you on. And overall, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we will tune in for the Winter Olympics in March.
Thanks a lot for your time, Brandon.